Hello, everyone. Good evening. How is everyone tonight? Sorry, I can't even talk. It's good to see you all. My goodness. Hey, Michelle. Hi, Mary. Hey, Checking Convictions. Welcome. So glad you're here. Everyone who's come over from True Crime Web, I welcome you. I'm so glad to have you. Hey, Level Headed. Thank you for subbing. Thank you for being here. Hi, True Crime and Coffee. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, CJK. Good to see you tonight. Hey, Pigeon Mac. How are you? Hey, Remy's Stuff. Mary Flynn. Good to have you here always. Melissa, Purdue RN. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, Digital. Always good to have you here. Hey, Mrs. Thang. Why? Good to see you. Hi, Isaac Rhodes. Oh, you are so kind. You are so kind. Thank you. Hi, Jess Pam. So good to have you all with me tonight. I am so excited to have Steve with me from True Crime Web. And he, as you well know, I think most of everyone who watches me is familiar with him. If not, please make sure that you go over to his channel and subscribe and join. He just started memberships on his channel. So go give him a thumbs up, subscribe, share his live streams, his videos, and please make sure that you give him support. The things that he is doing for true crime and missing children is absolutely amazing. And we're going to get into that with him tonight. I wanted to give you guys that are not or may not be familiar with Steve's background a little bit of information about him. Steve is a retired police officer. He was in law enforcement for 20 years. He worked in jail, road patrols, and investigations. He was also a SWAT team entry leader, a counter sniper. He's also state certified as a crime scene tech and an investigator. His crimes investigated range from burglary to homicide, and he's retired and good standing with the Post Council. So without further ado, I am going to bring Steve on. Everyone, please remain respectful in the chat and make him feel very welcome, please. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, you're so welcome. We're lucky. I'm the one who feels honored to have you here. You are always, your shows are always so informative. And every time I've seen you be interviewed by anyone in the true crime genre, you always leave us with lots of things to think about. I love your expertise and how you deliver it. You're such a down-to-earth guy. You know, a lot of people don't think police officers are. They kind of feel like they're hard to approach, and you're not at all.
Thank you. I'm just, like I said, I'm an old Georgia farm boy, and that had a career in law enforcement.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, that's enough, right? You've got a lot. I'm sure you have a lot of stories, and I'm sure Mrs. Steve hears a lot of them.
It is, and you have to give it to Mrs. Steve. I mean, you know, she has been, you know, the support of in so many levels that the wives of officers and what they have to go through, and when you come home in certain conditions that, you know, you've went out there and had either good days or bad days, and you come home and you know, she has supported me so much, and over all of these years, you know, we've been together 32 years, and it's been absolutely unbelievable.
Mills SD, thank you so much for your super chat. I so appreciate that. And thank you for your support. So Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about what has brought you to YouTube, what got you started in doing YouTube, and what your goals are for your channel, and what you and Mrs. Steve are up to right now.
Oh my goodness. How long is this show?
As long as you want to talk.
No, after, being involved in serving your community and having an impact on lives, which I hope I had as good and great an impact as I could in those 20 years. But after I retired and built another business, and then I saw, what the internet could do. And I started watching some of the law enforcement use of the social media platforms. And so I went in there on YouTube and looked at some of the true crime stuff and was absolutely amazed at what some of the research and some of the information and how people could get out there and have, in some instances, great impacts, and were able to work alongside law enforcement. And I said, at that point, I talked to the wife, and there was a certain case that came up in Delphi, as everyone knows, and I became aware of it through Marv and Frank's channel. And so they were having a great conflict with about some information. And so I decided and started being invited on as a guest from there. And of course, it progressed to people wanted me to start my own channel, and I've started it. And I've tried to work with as many creators as I can, and try to become an ambassador between law enforcement and the creators and the web sleuth world, so that people can understand how law enforcement looks at a crime, how we analyze certain information, and we're human. Law enforcement makes mistakes also. Lord knows I made my fair share of them. And but I just wanted to be able to come out here and be an ambassador and try to have an impact, a positive impact, and help as many people. Because if we can get together and work as a community and work with law enforcement when they need us, and whatever information and how we can unify and come together, gather information, share information for a impact that will be forever, either on the families of victims or on the victims or on a case, then we should do that.
Oh boy, I hear you on that, and I think that is amazing. What a reason to be here, to want to be the ambassador, to bring us all together, and kind of like I call it like a footbridge between us, the creators, and law enforcement. Because if you're aware of Cop Facts, which is who's a very close friend of mine, Perry Freeman. Perry is amazing, and I can't say enough about him. He and I are friends, and I talk a lot to him about things. He has given me a great perspective on how to cover my cases, and basically to stick to the facts, and try to not embellish too much on things. But it's always good to throw things off of one another, and to basically listen to even people you don't necessarily agree with, because you're going to learn something. And so I think it's great that we have you both in our community, because I'm sure there's others that we're maybe not just aware of, but to have you guys here to help us and really willing to talk to us and give us that direction of how investigators work. And I know a lot of people want to know that, because like you and I were talking earlier before you came on, this isn't a TV show. This isn't a 1 hour find out who did it, take them to court and put them in jail. That doesn't happen. And
No.
it doesn't happen that way at all. And so, yeah, I'm anxious for us to have that conversation. But I thought before we got into that, I wanted to talk about Michael. Your show
Yes.
tonight before mine was talking about Michael Joseph Vaughan, who has been missing for over a year now. And
Yes.
I have followed some of Michael's case. I definitely tweet about him a lot on Twitter. It's heartbreaking. And so let's talk about Michael. I'm going to pull up his and share his missing persons poster. So just give me a minute to do that so that everybody can get a feel for who Michael is. And so this is Michael. He was 5 years old when he went missing on July 27th, 2021. He was 3 feet 7 inches tall, weighed 50 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes. He was last seen wearing a blue Minecraft shirt and a black boxer briefs with lime green stitching, with size 11 flip-flops, sandals, and he was last seen around the Southwest 9th Street in Fruitland, Idaho. This photo was taken a month prior to his last seen date. And if anyone has information concerning Michael, please contact the Fruitland Police Department at 208-642-6006 or email tips and leads to find Michael at fruitland.org. There is a huge presence about Michael on Twitter. So there are the Twitter community is definitely getting Michael's story out. I don't know how much is being covered on YouTube, but I do plan on covering Michael's story because I definitely think that this is big and we really want him brought home. So you want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, most of I'm new to the case, like, you know, I'm new to the YouTube work, but upon speaking with some of the creators and seeing that how rare do we as a community that we have the ability to possibly bring a child home safely, because, you know, of course, there's always that in the true crime world, we're so familiar and we see so much of that. There's only one outcome, that it's always a tragedy and it's a death involved. This is an opportunity, though, that there's certain indicators and certain circumstances about his abduction that might not be that it was of that type of an abduction as being sexually motivated. There's a possibility that it's someone that was wanting a child and might be known to the family. And so those are the hopes that we have to work on. And it's so rare that we get this opportunity to do that. And that's the reason that has drawn me to Monkey. Michael is known fondly as Monkey. And we can't say that enough, because whoever has him and the family wants him back, you know, he's a beautiful child, and we should do everything we can to try to bring him home as quickly as we can.
Exactly. You know, it absolutely breaks my heart, this case specifically, because he reminds me of my youngest grandson, who's the same age. He'll be 5 next month. So it's just heartbreaking when you look at your own children and you think about what these poor families are going through with the not knowing what happened to their child. But Michael was out, Monkey was out looking around for a playmate, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He's doing what a 5-year-old does. You know, let's go find somebody to play with. And at some point he crossed paths with
a predator.
And you know, we most certainly have to see if we can't locate that predator, because the neighborhood he lived in, being, you know, isolated, a single, almost one way in, one out of the way in and out of the subdivision, it's a low crime type of situation, that this is an area you would normally go and look to abduct a child from. And so law enforcement looks at that type of victimology and trying to understand everything about where this victim is and what is his daily habits, who did he play with daily, what was his play zone, where would he go to if he couldn't find a playmate. And they'll calculate and they'll organize, and then they'll take the data from cell towers. You know, they'll do all the true crime stuff that we're all so familiar with, and compile a file and analyze it. And hopefully it'll have a positive impact on this case.
Yeah, I hope so as well. So everybody out there watching, please make sure that you share Michael's story, share it, you know, get copies of his poster, share his poster, and, you know, and anything that you can do to share his story to anyone and everyone, all of your social media platforms that you belong to, just share the posters, because that's how we get people to become aware of these cases. And since he went missing in Idaho, wherever you may be, people are not even going to know. They're not even going to have heard of him. So that's huge. And if you can do that in your own social circles where you live, those are big deals, especially with these predators who take children and then take them away from the location where they took them from, and take them across state lines and all other kinds of places. And we just want to bring him home safely. So Michael will be our missing person case for this evening, you guys, and we will continue to follow his case and to keep his picture out there for everyone, because he deserves it, and he deserves to be brought home to his family who love him. So Steve, thank you so much for sharing his story tonight and going over it so well. You did a great job explaining to your subscribers what was going on with everything. I think for somebody new to it, you got a really good take on the case very, very quickly, which wouldn't surprise me because you're law enforcement. So I do want to talk a little bit, or have you talk a little bit about what you said you got into the YouTube world from watching Marvin and Frank Meister. Can you explain when you first heard about Delphi?
Well, like I said, they were discussing some of the suspects and theories about the crime and everything. And for whatever reason, you know, I was watching that, and I saw these two young children that were preyed upon by this psychopath. And being a law enforcement officer and being a second generation law enforcement officer, I take offense with that. And I said, how can I might possibly assist? And started, like I said, contacted them, and the rest is history. And I'm fascinated by the case. We had some movement in the case this last week, or information release from murder sheets once again, which is an oddity in and of itself. But but with that information that narrows the field as far as my investigative opinion of what involvement and who is involved at what levels, of course, can be debated, and it still is, even in my mind, debated of how much involvement. But clearly there's some type of associations between this case, the Anthony shots, the Kleins, and Libby and Abby.
When you, I like how you said that when you got involved with Delphi that you found it to be a fascinating case, because I think it's the most, I don't even want to say fascinating. I want to say crazy. It's the most crazy case I have ever come across in my time of looking at or researching or whatever, a true crime case. There are so many POIs. There are so many levels to this case. Onion skin is how it reminds me of. There's just layers and layers. And like I told you, I've followed it since day one. So what are your thoughts as an investigator when you hear the people on social media talking so badly about how law enforcement has botched this investigation and why things have not been solved as of yet? Just your take on that as just a general investigator, and how murder investigations work.
Well, the same feelings that the community at large has about how law enforcement has felt, there's law enforcement officers within each department that feel the exact same way, that they have, when you're working these investigations, you get extremely involved in them. You're focused on one thing, that we have to find this predator, not only to serve justice for the victims of such as Libby and Abby, but also for the potential of harm that they can do to society if they continue along that path. And so every argument that the YouTubers have, there's individuals have the same feeling in law enforcement. And whatever strategies are picked and how long they stay with one focus and how the investigation is being run, and there's going to be arguments, there's going to be competition, there's going, there's chaos in every case. It starts from the time that the crime first occurs, that first responding officer, how well it's secured, how well it's processed, how well it's investigated. And I mean, it is a team effort. There's nothing easy about a crime. It doesn't matter if it's a smoking gun crime, it's still extremely complicated, far more complicated than most people will ever realize. Like I say, it's not a 43-minute show. I've looked at a bloody knife 10 feet away, and it may take, in certain crime scenes, 2 or 3 hours to get to that knife that's 10 feet away, because I've got to process and figure out a way to get to it and collect all the evidence that's between me and that item I want, that is so, that you're so focused on, and you say, that's very attractive, I need that knife. But you still have to look at that blood spatter, blood transfers, footprints, hair, fiber. There's so much that you can destroy, that if you overreact and outpace the investigation. So there's so much to a crime scene. Like I said, you could, to get my certification, it was 2 years of going to courses and stuff. So I can't cover it in 30 minutes, but most certainly it's like hunting that, everybody loves an Easter egg hunt. And that's what working these crime scenes are. You're looking for that golden egg. And sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, one of my moderators, Michelle out there, is a crime scene investigator in Florida. And so she can very well speak to what crime scene investigation is like. But what are the things you run into? What are the problems, I want to say, that you run into when you get a crime scene outdoors, where you have the type of scene that must have been where Abby and Libby were killed? What are the first problems as an investigator when you arrive do you have?
You got everything. What time of day is it? And how are we going to secure this against everything outside is hostile to a crime scene? The bugs, the animals, the wind, the weather. There's so much stuff. The sun, how it can destroy or alter certain things. And, of course, you got your weather fronts and everything else. I've been out there, whereas here in Georgia, we worked a homicide one time where we had an outdoor crime scene where a person was killed in a car alongside the road, and we had tornado warnings coming in, and we were in the path. And so we had to, make a decision. Do we sit here and see if we get hit with it, or do we secure the vehicle? And certain decisions have to be made, but everything's hostile to a crime scene outdoors. It's so much. I'd much rather be inside some type of secured building, because you don't have to worry about the weather. And, and then you have modern conveniences, whereas you've got control of air, temps, whereas outdoor, you don't. It's whatever's there.
And with Abby and Libby, they didn't suspect any foul play that first day. They were just considering them missing. So in a lot of ways, that in itself presented a huge problem for them, because by the time they realized that they had a murder scene, that place had been trampled over by tons of searchers. So you're probably thinking as an investigator, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because, being alongside a creek, and once you start seeing, when you find the victims, that's where the crime scene starts. It can be so fluid that as you backtrack, how did these victims get to a certain a location in the woods? And so you have to backtrack them and find out what was the avenue of how they got there.
Mm-hmm.
What was the delivery system to get them there, and what may have occurred along that pathway. And it's just so, like I said, a crime scene that you find outdoors, if it's, like on some paths or some highways that, they can be hundreds of feet away from certain locations. So everything between the abduction point to that second location has to be figured out and processed and analyzed and evidence collected. And
When
often missed.
When you came across the Delphi case and you saw that Abby and Libby were on that bridge, you must have been like, oh Lord. And then when you saw that Libby had taken the video and had the audio, what as an investigator did that say to you?
Well, when you find out that there is an abduction, and when they first found the victims, they didn't at that point know about where they were abducted from. At that moment, at some point during those first days from the upload shot, they would have had the picture, I think that was made at 2:07?
Yes. The Snapchat video pic or the Snapchat picture. Yes.
Yes.
2:07.
So they would have known they were on the bridge at least at 2:07. And so they would have, whenever they got knowledge of that, and I don't know what the exact timeline of law enforcement's knowledge of that was. But whenever that became, then of course you got two ends of a bridge. But when law enforcement first found the bodies and then they knew where she was dropped off at a minimum, they knew those two things, that when the girls were missing, this is the location where it started, where the drop off point was. Now we have a location of where we found two bodies. So what is in between those two known locations? Without a doubt, they have that. And so then they have to start working and trying to figure out, and they look at this trail, that how can you control what would be an ambush point? How could you control two women from a point that they were dropped off at to a point where they were murdered? And then you just keep moving. And as the evidence becomes, then you say that, oh, she was dropped off 30 minutes before the photo on the bridge. What areas would have allowed someone to be under surveillance during that period? Where would they be at? And, you have to put yourself in the place of that predator. Where would they do? Where is the predator sitting at that he can watch them possibly come into an ambush point? Can you hide in certain areas? Would the foliage allow that? Is there, that time of year, very few leaves? And so all this stuff about what law enforcement would get there and look at and analyze and say, if I was the predator, this is where I would be. This is where I could hide. This is where I can let them get within and analyze and look at, is there anyone else present, so that when I target and the targeting is another whole new topic of that. Of course, Abby and Libby were targeted, but were they targeted 5 minutes before they were abducted, or were they targeted 5 days before or 5 hours before? And so, of course, that's open to debate also.
No, exactly. And I think one of the most frustrating things about this case is that we were told early on by law enforcement that there was no catfishing and there was no social media involvement. And we went with that for years until the shock in December, of last year, when they dropped the Anthony Schatz profile on everyone. And so I don't know if that was strategic right on their part or if it was something else. I think that's confused. Like I said, it's confused a lot of us. And someone told me not too long ago that it's not law enforcement's job to keep us informed on what they're doing and why they're doing it. But those of us who follow these cases obviously would like to have a little bit more information and at least have some communication as to what's going on. So what is your take on that with what you know now about the Kleins and what you know happened with the CSAM investigation early on with them? What do you think was going on there? Because you and I talked about, and he brought this up, so I thought we should touch on it. What happens in that conference room when you guys are sitting around the table talking about this case in a multi-jurisdictional investigation?
Well, you're going to have arguments from everything about what is motive and what lines, what is our best option of which way to move forward. You're going to have certain teams that are following up leads because tips are coming in from the time the girls went missing, tips of where they might have been seen to when they were found to tips of suspects. And so you have investigative teams that are going off and down certain avenues of investigations. And everybody gets very possessive of their avenue. This is my home turf. This is what we've developed. This is who we think it is. And so there's some great arguments. I mean, you're dealing with alphas, male and female, that are very strongly opinionated, and they're focused on one thing. And the boss at the end of the day has to make that choice. And sometimes he's wrong. And then he has to go up in front of the public and say that, we're going to change gears. We're going in a new direction.
I know.
And he has to accept all, he never clarifies exactly about some of that information, but, they take the heat for it, and he's taking the heat for it. And I've given him a lot of heat for it. But it's nothing that, that wouldn't, I never thought, and in their defense, like when you listen to Ives, when he speaks, that no one thought it was going to be no more than 2 or 3 days. They had such a large amount of physical evidence, and they were wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I've held on to that one too, that he said that, and so did Jay Abbott, the FBI agent, the agent in charge for Indianapolis office, FBI office. He said the same thing. He said that they really thought that the case would be solved rather quickly. And there's something about that has always stuck with me, that there is something at that crime scene that made those investigators feel that way. Why would they think that? When they're looking at that crime scene, what would be something that would say to them, oh, wow, this is going to be solved we'll have this solved in no time? I mean, what was it?
Well, I mean, you can only guess. I mean, it's speculation. But,
yeah,
once they identified if the girls crossed the creek, which I don't, there's been arguments about how they got one side to the other. But if they did cross the creek and they have indications, which could be anything from on any of the soft embankments, muddy embankments, from shoe prints, hand prints, that if you have a third set of shoe prints or hand prints coming across there, of course, you've got that evidence. What conditions the body's in, what blood spatter tells you about the crime scene. There's so much that could be there, that what evidence is laying around that is not a natural wooded environment, something that belongs there. You've got nature, and you've got certain things in nature, but you got certain things man-made that are left at crime scenes. What is intentional, what is trash, all has to be sorted through.
Right. So, we as we, like I said, as we talk Delphi, I mean, we could, we could spend hours and hours, and I have talking about Delphi, but getting to what's been going on since just December, and the focus that's been coming out of every little a little while, we get a bit of information from this podcast. HLN did their special where they interviewed Kagan in jail, and we got a little bit of information from that. And then the interrogation of him back from August of 2020 was dropped. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes.
What do you think was possibly going on in that interrogation? I get asked all of the time, do investigators lie during interrogations of suspects?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's certain parameters you have to stay in, but you can lie to them and to certain levels and do certain things. You can't lie to them and say, I'm going to harm you or harm your family or certain things like that. But you can misguide them that we've got your fingerprints or we've got DNA, which, but you have to be so careful that if you do put a lie out there and the individual you're interviewing knows that's not the case, he knows you're lying. And so, there is a great risk in doing that. I worked with some investigators that did it all the time. I just never did. I didn't care about it. That I always try to gather enough evidence that it didn't matter what happened. But but they will lie in these things.
So, I mean, when they were talking to him in that interrogation, they could have lied to him about things that they told him, that they knew. Maybe they didn't know those things. We can't take every single thing that happened in that interrogation as fact, is what you're telling me.
Not everything, but, even within lies, they're based upon some truth.
Okay.
On some level.
Okay.
They may embellish. Law enforcement's famous for embellishing. But you have to remember that all interviews and interrogations are goal-oriented. That we're going to go in there, introduce ourselves, protect his constitutional rights, and then we're going to go after him, befriend him, lie to him, lead him to that whatever our goal is, to get him there where he will communicate certain facts or he will lie about certain facts. That they may be setting him up that, okay, you give me this answer. If he gives you an absolute lie, that's just as good as a confession. Doesn't matter. That, whatever he says is on paper. That's in an interview. And he can't get on the stand and says, well, I lied about this and lied about this, but I told the truth about this. And so, even the lies in interviews serve a purpose. And so when you go in there and you do all your behavioral science stuff and you get everything in a certain strategy and you're focusing that, when I looked at that whole interview, they wanted to know a lot about that North Country Road and that hookup with that residence, and what information was looked up at during that time period is critical. Don't know what it is, but that was critical. And now when we have this new information released recently, from him living 36 miles away, having the catfishing, looked up a gas station 1.36 miles from the murder site. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable.
It's a huge red flag, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Like I said, I don't know what his total involvement is, but there is a link that law enforcement is strongly backing. I mean, it would, they've got to the point now with the information that's been released that you're going to have to almost show a link of some type of the killer to Anthony Shots. I mean, it's got to that point almost that when you go in there into a court and it's brought up that whoever your killer is, has got to have some access to the internet. And I don't know what level that would be, but because, I don't think Keegan is bridge guy, but I do believe that he absolutely played some part in the death of those two children.
Right. Do you well, you brought up the whole gas station, the Marathon station. So that's something that's new that just came out that the murder sheet dropped. One of the things that they dropped that kind of bothered me, and I just wanted you to speak to it if you might. Tell me if you can't, but if you, the thing I want to ask you is this. The thing that bothered me that they brought up in this last podcast that they dropped was how they blame the FBI for messing up whatever the thumb drive or whatever it was they took from the station of the video surveillance. Is that common in an ongoing investigation for law enforcement to come out and blame the other agencies that may be helping them? How common is that?
I don't know if other agencies blamed them or if that's just the murder sheet's interpretation of it. For the fact that when you go and you collect all this, and the FBI is, there's protocols and procedures of how you secure electronic devices, computers, hard drives. I mean, there's manuals on it. But most of these security systems, they're on a loop, and was what they're needing had already been overwritten, because I don't know the time frame of when they were able to get to every area they identified that had camera systems. I'm impressed they even found a service station on a back street that had the data. They didn't know at the time that it was going to be critical, but and then of course, is it due to some corruption that the FBI did or law enforcement did, or a forensic analyst corrupted it? I don't know that for a fact yet. And is it irretrievable? And we have to pay attention that it's not 5 years later that we're becoming aware of this. Law enforcement knew this within a few months of that, because they already knew about the Anthony shots by then, because they had already changed directions in 2019. So we're only looking at less than 2, because when they came to the public and said, we're going a new direction, that wasn't day one of the new direction. Day one would have been weeks or months before. When they did the news briefing, they realized that the information they had, they couldn't finalize, and they needed the public's help. And that's why they came out with that new sketch and came out with that new direction. And that, like I say, it's not day one in 2019. They'd already been working it, backdating it. And so, and they already knew that, the information was corrupted, and they just couldn't bring it.
You know that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation came in as a peer review of the case, and they did that in the late fall, early December of 2018. So I think you're right, because I've always felt like when the GBI did that review is when they found some of the mistakes that they were thinking, you guys missed this. You guys should have done that. This is what you should be focused on, not this. What you're focusing on, this is it. You guys missed this or overlooked it or whatever happened. I feel that's what happened. It happened with the GBI.
Very possible, or it could have been GBI. It could have been another line of investigators that, like I said, there's so many people, and you have to give them kudos for even having the peer review and saying, that they realized at some point within a year and a half that, what are we doing wrong? How come we didn't put somebody in jail? And how can we correct this? And, even the peer reviews, I can't fault them for it. That's what you should do.
Right. No, exactly. I'm glad they did it. Molly asks, at Steve, do you think they didn't arrest Kagan in 2017 and let the Anthony Shots account continue for both Delphi and the CSAM ring? And do you think they were keeping him and his associates under surveillance?
I always have, and I've talked about this before. In certain investigations, you're going to have that if you're investigating homicides, sometimes you're going to find that there is a drug link, and it may be the murder or whatever occurred due to drugs, or it may be with a child porn rings and things in this case that they're looking at, that they'll run a parallel investigation and keep certain people under surveillance while they're conducting those investigations. which sometimes leads to more victims. And I hate that, that sometimes they look at as that those other victims are the cost of doing business. And I've always hated it. You see a lot of that in the drug world, where they'll come in these pill mills and they'll let thousands and thousands of people get affected by these drugs and due to these pill mills, and they'll absolutely destroy multiple communities, but they'll run them for a year or two. And I've always had issues with that.
Yeah, it's scary to think that they have to do that to get them, to let it go. I know a lot of people are angry about it. I know a lot of people don't understand why the CSAM was let go and no charges filed out there and allowed them to possibly victimize others. I guess the only thing I can say from my standpoint, and I'm not law enforcement, is that they have a reason for what happened. There's got to be a reason. I don't necessarily think that it was a complete fumble on FBI's part or anybody else's. I do have an issue, however, with the FBI agent who came out so quickly that said that Kagan was not involved in Delphi. I do have an issue with that. I don't think that was professional. They didn't know enough. How would they possibly even know that? So yeah, I really thought that was kind of strange. But what are you making of the 10 days of couple weeks now of searching that's been going on in the Wabash River in Peru where the Kleins live? Obviously, you've got an opinion on what's happening there, but what is that?
Well, I mean, yeah, what are they looking for? Is it something, communication device? Is it a phone? Is it walkie-talkies? Is it, what is it that possibly could be linked to this? And I'm waiting on the murder sheets to release it. But I have to give it to them for this fact that they have kept focus on this case. When it needed a kick to get back into the headlines and keep the focus on it, they most certainly, and is it a strategy of law enforcement? Don't know. But if it's not, these people are, without a doubt, they have a source within prosecution or LE, one or the other.
Yeah, I agree that they have to have some kind of an inside source that's giving them this information. And also, I had them on my show back in March, and I interviewed Kevin and Anya from the Murder Sheet right after they dropped the very first transcript and the very first part of it. And they weren't doing interviews with people much. And they told me why. They told me that they didn't feel comfortable because they weren't sure who to trust and all of that. And YouTube was new to them because they were a podcast. They had just started their YouTube channel, wasn't really sure about how to go about YouTube and things like that. And I had a really good show with them and a really good conversation. And I really felt at the time that both of them really care about this case and didn't want to do anything to hurt it. And Kevin is an attorney. So I really felt good about that. As time went on, though, I did start thinking, what the heck's going on and why are they dropping all of this information? But as you said, I firmly believe either law enforcement wanted them to, I don't know, or somebody is just leaking it to them. They have made it apparent that they do talk to law enforcement and ask them ahead of time, is this going to be a problem if we put this out? I do give them kudos for that if that's what they're doing, because obviously there are things that we could as content creators do to hurt this case. And I have told my subscribers for 6 months now that I'm going to be very careful about what I cover and how I cover it, because I don't want to do anything that could taint a jury or cause problems. And people forget that. And how do you feel about that with being, now that you're in this arena as a creator and being in law enforcement, are you feeling the same as far as we have to be careful on how we cover and what we say?
I worry more about that when you're looking into true crime, that you're dealing. We still have two killers out there, possibly on, that up to two, maybe three. It depends on how you look at it. If you look at how much Anthony Shots is involved, that link along with another one, that would be two. So you've got at least, possible multiple people out there that have killed two children, and you as a creator are trying to find them. And that there's a certain risk factor there, that if you do certain things and they get certain mad, they're a proven threat. I worry more about that. As far as hurting the case, they're going to find 12 jurors plus the alternate jurors, and that have no knowledge of it. And so it's not like they're going to be able to go in there before a judge and say, hey, YouTuber from over and so said this. So I don't really worry about so much what, the YouTube world's going to go out there and do. But I do worry about the YouTubers that might be either endangering innocent people by identifying them as suspects and destroying their lives, and also putting themselves at the risk of getting someone else injured or killed.
Right, for sure. And I think that that's probably a big deal. So what is going on, or in your mind? I guess you've seen they're doing this search now, and they've been at it for a couple of weeks, and that they're looking for something. And do you feel that this is related in some way? I think you already said it, but just re-clarify it to Delphi. And if you do you think that this case is going to be resolved soon?
I hope it is. I'm hoping that as the trial comes close, that there's great leverage in a young man losing any hope of ever walking and experience freedom again. So there's great leverage that could be applied, and that may be the leverage. Is it a big coincidence that the same time period that, which I found it shocking, that the Indiana State Police went through the court systems to get custody of him? That made absolutely, I don't understand that. Down here in Georgia, if you want to go talk to somebody, you called up whatever jail they're in and say, I want to come talk to them. And we went.
I'd never heard of that either, but does the taking of the custody possibly mean that they took him out of the jail?
Well, it wouldn't matter. He's still in the same state.
Okay. So you could just go get him for the day? You could just go get him for the day and take him somewhere, or?
Oh yeah. We transport, if we needed to go to South Georgia or North Georgia or West, East, wherever we needed to go, we went and say, hey, we're going to come down and get so-and-so. And okay. It was never an issue. I never had an issue with that. And I didn't, but Indiana state law may be different than what Georgia is. Don't know.
I want to tell my subscribers that I am keeping track of your questions, and we'll get to those right before we close the show. So I am keeping track of them. Please don't think that I am. And everybody, please be respectful and maintain the chat with the conversation that's happening with Steve and I. I appreciate that if you would. Thank you. But yeah, I just wondered how you felt about that, as far as whether or not you thought it was going to come to a conclusion soon, or if you think they're still investigating and they still have a ways to go, or.
I think it will. I think it is, for the fact that, it's a heck of a coincidence that, that we're searching the river and we got him out in our custody, and for what reason. And it could be a coincidence, but there's very few coincidences in life and law enforcement.
Yeah. And that's what I've always heard. There's no coincidences in murder. I don't know if that's true, but I've always heard that, that usually things where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. But, so I really hope so. I hope you're right. I really think we're getting close to today being the day. And I know that that's law enforcement's saying for Delphi. It's on the walls of their offices where they conduct the investigation and talk it all over and stuff. And today needs to be the day. I want this solved for the families so badly, and justice for the girls. I
Oh
think
yeah.
we all do. But will you talk a little bit about Cyclops and tell us what you and Mrs. Steve are doing and what you guys are going to be doing here soon?
Man, when we got into this and when we saw what was going on out there, and I started looking into the Delphi, and then there was the issue about, was Delphi linked to Evansdale? And so, so when I looked at that, and then I saw the Evansdale, and then I went on into on the web and tried to find, well, if we have a serial offender when that's 5 years apart, what else could he have done within those 5 years? And when I did that search, I found out that it's so hard to find certain age groups of victims. And so me and Mrs. Steve discussed it, and we said, well, okay, let's look up and see how we can create a database where it's age specific, and how can we organize it. If you're looking for a missing 5-year-old, or if you're looking for a missing 13-year-old, how can you differentiate between one and the other in the easiest form, so that you can look at clusters, meaning that if you have a community of, say, 100,000 people, and you have 15 children that might be murdered or missing in one location, and 100 miles away you've got another community that has none missing, then we have a cluster and we have an issue within a certain community. And so we devised the Cy-Clops, which is simply the Citizens Crime Link Op system, whereas the FBI has VICAP, whereas VICAP is where law enforcement collects the same data. They share certain information, certain crimes, certain ages, and I wanted to do that for a civilian version, and that's what came up with Cyclops.
Awesome. That I just think it's amazing. I am so excited about it. When I caught the live that you guys were doing when you were talking about it, it was like my mind exploded kind of, because I was like, this is going to be so wonderful, because when you are out there searching and searching and you're trying to find information on some of these child cases especially, and I'm so into the child cases myself, and it's like, it is hard to find stuff. And I think it's interesting when Mrs. Steve was talking about some of the states and how many missing are in some of these states. I think we as a country are not aware truly of what the impact is of the missing children that are missing currently right now in this country. You want to speak to that
Absolutely.
a little bit?
Of course, and I have to give and show my appreciation for all the volunteers that go out there, spend their time, that's from this YouTube world, that have volunteered to collect that data state by state. I think we're somewhere between 13 and 15 states now, and it's a slow process for the fact that they have to go out there and find murder, and they have to find missing. And
Hi, Frank
some states
Meister.
are
Good to see you.
and some states
Sorry.
are better organized than others. And like Mrs. Steve tells our volunteers, take a break every now and then, because it's extremely depressing, and there's a lot of long hours and work involved in that. And I feel so bad for Mrs. Steve at times, and she has to take breaks from it, because it can get very depressing when you see child after child that is either missing or murdered, and the family's at a loss and they don't know where to go. That they've turned to law enforcement, and they put all their hope into that, and then within a year or two, if it hasn't come to any type of end, law enforcement has a multiple cases that they have to continue. Life goes on, and some cases get left behind. And these families, they deserve more. And how can
Right.
we help?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Molly just posted that Nebraska has an insane number. And I think there's a reason for that. You have to look at some of these states that are on these interstates that go from coast to coast. Nebraska has Interstate 80 that runs right smack through it, and it is very rural. And I think that that has a lot to do with why some of these predators choose these locations. Um, and I don't know, you might speak to that, but I think that they try to funnel children through some of these interstates that go from coast to coast, and especially if they're trafficking kids.
Oh yes, and I think just recently they made a bust of what was several hundred children that were found and recovered from a child trafficking ring, and it's just absolutely amazing of how we as a society haven't figured out a way of being able to come up with some type of system that is better able to protect our children. And I don't know what the final answer is. I don't.
I really think, I talk about it a lot on my shows about protecting our kids, and I've given a lot of information, valuable information to my subscribers and viewers about ways to help protect them from the internet, things that are going on out there. I really feel the companies need to be doing more. These internet companies, these application companies that design these apps that draw in our teenagers and our young people, and for whatever reason, they're not building them safely and making it safer for these kids to be on these platforms. I think that's part of it. I think we're going to have to really try to work at better restriction of some kind for these companies, and not just give them an open floor plan to say, here's our kids, go out and do whatever you want to with them and allow whatever you want on your platform. But I also think it's about education and educating not only parents, but teachers and everyone about these predators. And because I really don't think people realize how many are out there, and a lot of them are unknown. They're not registered sex offenders. We've
Oh,
got predators out there that are not even known about.
that's what keeps me up at night. That we know,
I'm sure.
we know the serial killers that have been caught. We don't know the super serial killers that haven't been caught. The ones that are so good at their game,
Yeah.
BTK was almost that level, because, but he never realized what DNA is. But now we're in the ability that some of these developing serial killers know about DNA. They know about the internet. They know about, and they can educate themselves. The serial killers of the future are going to be at a level that is unimaginable. And how are we going to address that issue? Because they're out there. They're better educated. They have they have a library of information that teaches them how not to leave DNA. And we've created this, and how do we answer that? And that's what I worry about.
Yeah. I think I think it's hard, and there's so many different aspects to it, and again, so many different levels to try to protect our kids. We just have to do better, or I think we have to do better. And I don't like to blame parents. People really want to blame all the time. People are always out there looking to blame. Who do we blame? And it's just kind of like, I love your mantra about if all the great things that we can do together, if we bring ourselves together and stop trying to blame and just bring our collective heads together and come up with ideas on how to make a difference, and how can we fix, what can we do as individuals to help fix and make the problems better? Because I think that's where it's going to start. And I've always talked to my followers and told them it starts at your city level. You can't expect the federal government to do this. You have to start within your own cities, your own hometowns. And it starts with that, going to your council meetings, talking about safety of your kids. And how do we start doing this? Those are the kinds of things I see from
Oh,
just
absolutely.
a, general point of view.
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely. Can't argue that at all.
So what are you going to be doing come October?
Well, October, that's our first planned trip going. We're going to be, I'm in contact right now with 3 families that have asked me to look into either processing certain items at a crime scene. So we're going to be traveling. I've got cases linked all the way, that one family's linked from all the way to Texas. So I'm going to be traveling Midwest. If weather permits, I even get to drop in on Delphi. But so I'm going to be meeting with these families, trying to process whatever evidence I can, because there's certain crime scenes that are possible that we may be able to look into, or may not be able to. And, and even in Texas, there's locations I've got to go check and see if I can't find, possible, locations of victims. And, it's just one thing after, that I never envisioned that we ever get to that. There was that much that had been missed or hadn't been processed by law enforcement that would allow this information or this possible evidence to still exist. And just like with the McClurkin case, that they went over there this many years later and finally luminol the residents. They could have done that week 1.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this could have been solved week 1. They don't have anything now that didn't exist week 1.
No, exactly. And these cold cases that you're covering and that you're going to, there's so many of them out there. And I just commend you for starting this and doing this, because as you well know, like I said, there's just so many cases. There's not enough people to look at them all. And law enforcement is kind of behind an 8 ball because they keep getting their funding cut. Law enforcement keeps getting their funds cut. They can't hire because of that. And then you end up with fewer officers. You have all of these cases. It's just not physically possible. And like you said, some cases get put on the back burner because of that. And especially cases that may not be getting as many tips anymore or whatever. Those cases probably go to the back. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, you only have so much resources. And it's, whatever the most pressure, and sadly, sometimes it's totally political, and, who gets put up front.
I'm really glad that you said that and brought that up, because I feel there's a lot of political going on in Indiana right now with a lot of the solvability rate of their cases. And I think a lot of it is political. But I also think that they've got an issue, because being 48th in the country with not solving their murders, there's got to be something going on there, whether they need retraining or whatever. There's something not happening there. So we've been covering that a little bit, and I've been trying to do it in a very professional manner, as to not just come blatantly out and saying these guys don't know what they're doing, because I believe that there's very good officers and people who really care about these cases and stuff, but there's something going on in that.
I hadn't seen that state. I hadn't seen that. 48th
out of the 50th, out of the 50 states. Yes. In the solvability rate of their murders, especially.
Wow.
Did you know that Marion County, which is the county that houses Indianapolis, they currently have 37,500 cases waiting for trial.
Yeah. No, They don't have, that's unbelievable. I mean, you don't even have a prison system that you, even if it went to trial, where would you put them?
They've got 37,500 cases going to trial, and they have a prosecutor in that county who has come out and told everyone on camera that he is not a team player with law enforcement. That's not what he's there for, is to be a team player. And I always felt that the district attorney or the prosecutor was supposed to be a team player with you guys. Aren't you guys doing the investigation and then going to him and saying, help us, tell us what we need? Do we need more? Do we have enough?
I'd call him a gang leader. You know, if if you ain't with us, you're against us. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, how did you get elected into office that you've decided that the criminals, that you're not going to use law enforcement to arrest them, prosecute them, or whatever? I just don't understand that mentality. It makes
I
no
know.
sense.
It does make no sense. I am glad that you brought that up, though, about the political, because I do think that a lot of these cases are political. And I've often wondered why certain cases seem to get the traction and the national attention, and everybody just goes crazy about that case. And then you have the case like Michael, who probably has garnered some attention, but he's not all over the news. You don't hear about him constantly like we did Gabby Petite. You know, Gabby got tons of coverage, and Kylie Rodney, who just passed away, we just found out about her. She was everywhere. I'm like, how do we get some of these cases to get national attention that deserve
Well,
it? What do you think?
now some of that has to do with the social media platforms and how certain people and certain influencers can have an impact, and and how are we going to correct that? You know,
Right.
that it's not so much the news agencies, although they play a part in it too, but the social media platforms that are out there, that there's certain influencers out there that can take that case and run with it and create an atmosphere. And is that what happened on those cases? Um, don't know. Like I said, I'm new to this world. I've only been around in this YouTube stuff for about uh, 3 months. Yeah.
Well, like I said, you've made quite an impact for sure, I believe, in the YouTube world, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that would say the same thing. I mean, you've grown really quickly. That says a lot, because you're obviously hitting the ball out of the park with getting people to watch and listen to you. And like I said, I think you're bringing so much to the table, the professionalism, the experience. That's the kind of level-headed stuff that we need in this genre. So I appreciate you, completely. SD,
Thank
I
you.
saw what
That
you.
humbles me. That absolutely humbles me. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and I mean it. It's very heartfelt. I saw a question here. I want to ask a question of SD, is one of my followers. SD, what were you talking about? Was it a dig at cops because of politics or corruption? No, I wasn't talking about corruption. We were just talking about how some of these cases become political, and they do. So I'm not sure if that was directed at us or if it was just a comment in the chat. So I'm going to go back here and look at some questions. It looks like Alicia said, Steve, have you been fishing today? You
No,
look like the sun has gotten you.
I was out mowing yards all day.
There you go. So he was
I've been
mowing
on the farm.
today.
I work and live on a farm, and until the storms came in, I was trying. We've just been flooded down here with all this rain, and so yeah, I've been out in the sun up until this afternoon when the storms moved in.
Well, that's good. Then that explains why I thought you were probably sunning too. You look like you got a little sun on your face. Steve, there's another question here from Molly, and I think you may have
Yes, I
answered
did.
this already.
Yeah, we did.
So I think they always keep these guys under surveillance once they figure
They do.
out what they're doing. They're gonna watch them. There's a question I thought I read in a chat somewhere, a post by a female who said Kagan's attorney is a source for murder sheet. Also thought another creator said the same thing. Steve, what are your thoughts on the possibility of that?
That's interesting. I'm trying to figure out what would be the angle of what would be the benefit
of that, exactly.
Of including yourself into the murder of 2 children. If he is, that's the worst attorney that's ever. I know how I'm gonna get that.
Most innocent people don't place themselves in the middle of a murder
investigation. I'm gonna get you out of child molestation, but I'm gonna get you out of child porn, but I'm gonna put you in the murder of 2 kids.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. Joe wants to know, I have a question. The sketches were drawn from eyewitness input. So why not show the Klein's photos to the eyewitnesses and ask if that's who they say they saw that day?
Very possible they did. You have to do a lineup, but then you have to also how good of a view did they have? And if you risk it, if they're saying that we saw somebody that looked like this and they're 100 feet away, and then they positively say, don't pick them out, that is in court. That who did you show that lineup to? And you didn't pick them out then. And,
exactly. They can't just show them photographs, can they?
No, it has to be within a lineup.
That's a bias.
You have to be within a lineup. And
it has to be a photo lineup. That's why they take people down and have them look at books or pictures of,
There's only one exclusion to the lineup, and that has to be immediately within a certain time. I mean, I'm talking about within minutes of a crime being committed, and they have to match certain descriptors.
Okay.
Where it doesn't have to be a lineup. But now that's in Georgia. I don't know how it is in crime capital of the world. Some of these states are. But
yeah, no, exactly. So hold on a second. Let's see what else I may have missed here as I was going along. Let's see. What did you make of the whole car at the CPS building? Do you think that's a red herring, or do you really feel that there was a car there when they asked about the driver only and didn't talk about the car? What's the deal with that?
Well, most certainly somebody saw something there, and we have to explain that if it's within a certain time frame, we have to follow up that lead. What it led to, don't know, but there's something that led law enforcement to believe that there was a vehicle there, and it was within a certain time frame that could have been critical. And what is it critical? And what, where has it led? I don't know. There's so much to this case that they looked at and they put out there, and then they took it away and never followed up with anything that I know of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. It's like they put all these questions in our heads and then didn't give us anything to answer them, so to speak. And just so you know, the information I was telling you about Marion County with Indianapolis and the 37,000, that was from a interview with the president of the FOP.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically just this past week did a they took a vote of no confidence against the prosecutor and got it. So they have just been having a lot of problems there. I just thought that was interesting. And yeah. I still am just floored, like I said, floored by that. It just goes to show you what law enforcement can be up against.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can't arrest him. How can you even arrest somebody if they're not going to be prosecuted?
When you've got, I was floored when he stood at that podium and said that there were 37,000 cases waiting for trial. And he even figured out the math of how many trials would have to take place in a certain amount of time. And it's just years. It would take years to get through these cases. And you know that they're continuing to make arrests. So it's just growing. I don't know what they're going to do in that situation, but it's mind boggling, I think, to me. But you know what? Like I said, there was a question here from David Gray, who said, do you think something would still be in the same spot in the river after 5 years?
Depends how it landed and what was those first few months and what floods. I don't know how often it floods up there and what flood waters do, but there's certain things that, it takes a certain amount of surface area to be moved in water. And can it be? Yeah, I mean, if it's something lightweight like a phone or a walkie-talkie or thumb drive, it could be, 500 yards downriver. If it's something heavier, it may only be, relatively within a few yards. There's no telling.
So my thought was, the Wabash River is very low right now, very low compared to what it usually is. And a lot of our rivers around here we haven't had as much rainfall as normal. So things have been a little drier, I would say. And so I know back in 2017 that the Delphi, the Deer Creek was much higher than it is now. And it has been that way for a while. If you look back at the records, and I can't remember the count or who it is that keeps them, but there's a federal organization that keeps these records on the water flow, how high it is, the runoff, all of that. And they can even tell you how many gallons of water are being pushed per cubic feet, per hour, per second, whatever. And with all of that being known, it was moving pretty quickly the day the girls had to cross it, if they crossed it, and that they and that it was deeper, much deeper. So I just wanted everybody to know that the Wabash back then could have been much higher than it is now, which I'm assuming that it probably was. But there's a lot of sediment and rocks in that river. A lot of those streams around that area have really rocky beds. And so this stuff that was thrown in there, if it's electronics, like you said, or whatever, it could get stuck in rocks. Yeah. Who knows? I think my question to you as an investigator with all of that, if there happens to be a knife in there somewhere, let's just say that has blood on it, would that blood still be embedded somewhere in that knife, like in between maybe a rivet or a screw, or however the knife was put together? Would that still be retained if it was thrown out 5 years ago versus if it had been thrown out recently?
The DNA that we work with wasn't that hardy. Now, are there certain surfaces and certain ways that could have been and may have been, but I wouldn't think so after 5 years. But that doesn't mean that the technology won't be developed. But it would be mind-boggling. Now, that's not to say that, we got a place in Tennessee called a body farm.
Yes.
That they go in and they experiment with everything. Someone that has been there, I tried to get in there, but I was too close to retirement, and they wouldn't let me go. As going in there to take some of the courses, but I don't want to be submitted there, but they would probably have done studies about how long in certain, because they bury anything and everything. They would bury, there's studies done about burying weapons and things. So I'm going to look that up. That's a very good question. But in the total water environment, running water, I don't see how it would be possible.
That's
in
me. I wondered that too, but I also know that I've seen it in crime shows where true crime shows where they've talked about they were trying to match a knife with a wound,
oh
and
yeah,
they were trying to figure out if there was blood, and they were able to take the blade apart from the knife, and they found blood or pieces of blood or whatever embedded under there, and the killer had thought they wiped it clean,
yes,
but it
yeah.
wasn't. It was still down under there. So I guess that was my thought, is would it still be safe if it's in water? And I don't know, I'm not a crime scene expert, so I don't know how that degrades, but
In a dry, conducive environment where it could, just like DNA, that when you do a DNA swab and you air dry it and you seal it and keep it in a certain environment that is conducive to maintaining the DNA profile, it can last forever. But the water environment is the variable that I'm unfamiliar with, that over that long. I mean, if you just took a bloody knife, threw it in the water, and went over and picked it up in a minute or two, yeah, there's an argument for it. But
right.
running water for 5 years, I don't
No.
think that's an argument.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. There wasn't going to be any blood or DNA on the on that evidence. Um, the other question I know that one of my subscribers asked me the other night, and I'm just going to pitch out at you, and then we'll go ahead and get the rest of these questions and get you out of here. You've been live for too long.
No,
Is what do you think about clothing? Would somebody ask me if clothing was thrown in the river, would clothing be able to be recovered after that long?
you know, uh, it depends, and this is the thing about how things degrade. It's when you have something water and air, just like you can go out to a fence post. You know, a fence post that's under deep in the ground is still solid and well preserved. It's where the air and water meets that everything degrades and rots. You can have clothing. So if it's totally submerged, it has a great chance of lasting a long time. If it's, partially uh, where it has air and water, that's when things start deteriorating. Um,
Right.
but but once again, after 5 years, uh, you know, I wouldn't expect that they're looking for an article of clothing. I really don't.
Yeah. No, somebody asked me it and I just wanted to throw it. I didn't think they would be either, but you never know. And it's hard to know exactly what they're exactly up to, I guess. But
Well, I've been surprised by Indiana State Police numerous times, so they may be.
I think we all have. I'll say that for sure. Um, let's see. There's a question. Mandy asks, my question to law enforcement has always been, has it been confirmed that the girls actually crossed the creek? Well, law enforcement has never said that, that I'm aware of. Law enforcement has never given us anything except what happened on the bridge between 207 and the time that the perpetrator on the bridge said down the hill to the girls, and that's a
I would be
43-second.
I would be shocked if they didn't, for the fact that law enforcement spent so much time with their forensic team in the water next to where the tape was. And there's only two explanations of why they would have spent that much time in that creek. One, either the girls crossed the creek, or one, they were looking for something indicated that something was possibly thrown into the creek.
Okay. Because they did recover at least one article of clothing from the creek, because they called for evidence bags that day, and one of the things heard on the radio, and that's on the RTV6 coverage of it. You can hear that when they're talking over the radios. They call for evidence bags. They found something in girls' clothing or some clothing in the creek.
Yeah. And
So I know they did recover that. I know they recovered supposedly a cigarette butt that day as well. And which to me is kind of odd because one of two things, they had all those searchers out there, anybody could have been smoking. But anyway, they did recover one. And I agree with you. I mean, I often wondered why they were all in the water. I didn't know if maybe they thought that, he may have left something behind in the water, or, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless they did cross the water.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, it has to be one or two reasons that they're in a absolutely water environment searching for what. And it's either got to be that, is there something there, or was something thrown?
Yeah,
Or did they
exactly.
cross?
Yeah. So, hold on a second and let me see. Let's see. Let's see. I was just wanting to make sure I didn't miss anybody's questions. I think I got them all. I guess my only last question I'm going to ask you about is the Ron Logan search warrant that came out that told us a little bit more about the crime scene and stuff, and about the staging and the girls' bodies being moved. What do you feel about, because there's a big contention about what they mean by when they say the bodies were moved. And I don't believe law enforcement told us the girls were not killed anywhere else, that everything happened right there where they were found. So if the girls were killed right where they were found, couldn't the movement of the bodies that was being referred to in the search warrant affidavit be them positioning the bodies possibly?
Absolutely. I mean, law enforcement, of course, you're trained to talk about certain things using certain words, but that doesn't mean that sometimes people don't misinterpret or misquote or missay a certain word. That stage is posed or movement is staging, and that was quite interesting that when they talk about staging, and persons that committed certain things would often memorialize this by taking, such as what BTK did, pictures. But that was all extremely interesting and fascinating. And I will go with that. The murders happened within that taped off section, and probably more towards the center of that taped off section. And because they'll work out from that, and now if they work back from that. But how far they were moved? Are they talking about they were moved 5 feet, 20 feet, or 1 foot? I don't have any idea.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Candace, for your super sticker and your support. I so appreciate you. One more question, and then we're going to let Steve go. Steve, does Steve think the Delphi murders, Florham fire murders, and so many other fires in that area could be connected? And if so, seems that these killers change up their MO. Is that possible with serial killers, I guess?
Well, you got the ages, which is still consistent, but you do not have the you got murders that happen at night in a total different manner of death. And you not even ensured that death would occur from a fire. And so I personally don't think they're linked. But that's just my opinion. And, I've been wrong before, but I just don't have that feeling that, it's a distance, different time of day, different race of victim, and different manner of chancing the possibility of a murder. So I don't think they're linked.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so very much for being here. I cannot thank you enough. You hit it out of the ballpark for me tonight. You answered everything, and I just enjoy you 100%. So I can't say enough. I want everyone that's here that's watched him. We've got 114 people watching, and I thank all of you for being here and supporting us. please make sure that you go to True Crime Web's YouTube channel, subscribe, make sure you share his content across your social media, give him a thumbs up. He has just turned on memberships. Please join his channel so that he can have some help to do his cold case investigation that he's going to be undertaking in October. We need to support him just like we support Adventures with Purpose. These guys are out here doing stuff on the ground, boots on the ground, and we need to really support them. So again, I just really appreciate you being here, and I think you're wonderful. So
thank you. I'm honored by you allowing me to come up here and say my piece, and I respect you, and most certainly keep up the good work. And if I can ever do or help you in any shape, form, or fashions, never hesitate to call.
Oh, don't worry. I will be probably asking you questions and emailing you. So don't worry. But we'll stay in touch for sure. And again, thank Mrs. Steve for allowing us to steal you for tonight. I think she's wonderful as well. And thank her for doing all of the things she's doing with Cy-Clops. That's a lot of work that she's undertaking, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night and have a good evening.
All right. Well, I'll get out of your hair, and y'all have a great night and stay safe.
All right. You be safe too. Well, there you go, guys. Wasn't that amazing? I know it was a long time, you guys. It was a lot longer than I actually really wanted to have him here because he was live right before me. But I knew that there was a lot of things that we really wanted to cover. And he is just such a down-to-earth person and really easy to talk to. And yeah, I really like him. I don't know. I really just like him a lot. So, but anyway, he's great. And I'm really glad that you guys were here to be with him. And please make sure that you go over and subscribe and like his channel and watch his content because it's really good stuff. I've been here for a while. I always do my drawing, so I'm going to go ahead and get my drawing ready for tonight. So just give me a moment, please. I'm just going to pull up my tool here. And for the giveaway tonight, it will be a Delphi bracelet, one of the Delphi wristbands for the Delphi girls. And tonight it's going to be hashtag True Crime Web. Let me make sure I spell it right, you guys. Gosh. Okay, so it's all set up. Just do hashtag True Crime Web. Make sure that you put spaces in between True Crime Web. Michelle, can you put spaces in there, my dear? And it'll grab it. Thank you. And so once I get the entries going for that, yeah, David, there is a lot of stuff going on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Delphi is connected to Flora. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but there is definitely, I agree with you. We have been finding out some really, really unsettling things about all the fires and the suspicious fires in the 6-county area. Make sure that you tune into Unsolved Crimes channel this week because she is going to be dropping some information. She's done a wonderful video for you guys and you'll get to see it. So make sure that you check that out. I appreciate her being here. I know she had to leave. She's got to work in the morning, and so I totally get that. But I'm sorry, you guys, that it was so late tonight. I know it's a late night for me. Um, and David, I do give you credit. I appreciate all that you have to say when you're here. Just remember that we all want the same thing, and that we all want these cases solved. And I don't care if I'm right. I don't have to be right in what I think happens. All I need is these cases solved and the perpetrators to go to jail. And so, there's many of us have different theories and different ideas, and we can still come together and have a great evening and talk a lot about what's going on out there. And we can still remain civil and nice to one another and have a great evening. And that's all I want. And I get that these cases are maddening, and the passion is out there. And I agree with you. The reality is too awful for many people to even consider it. I used to get so capitals. I don't know what she's talking about. True Crime Web is in capital letters: T, capital T, capital C, capital W. But what I was trying to say is that I get, every time I do a Flora show, I get a ton of hate about not connecting Flora to Delphi. Please don't connect these cases. For some reason, there's people out there that don't even want to consider the possibility. And that's what I know you're talking about. And it's hard. It is really hard. But once you start looking at the data of all of these fires and these dead children, and especially dead female children, it really makes you know. I mean, Steve just talked to us about clusters. And when you start having clusters, whether it be missing children, dead children, whatever, you've got a problem. You have something going on in your community. And we just, yeah, we just need to continue to push that envelope, do that investigating, keep talking about it, keep making sure that we are getting it out there and covering it, and not letting the people who don't want us to talk about it win and keep us silent. I think that's where it's at. And Molly, I am so happy that you've been here tonight. You have really given us a lot of good information, and you are absolutely right. Kindness and respect goes a long way. More of that is needed in this world. I can't even say enough about that. That is absolutely true. And at the end of the day, we all want today to be the day. And as I was talking with a really close friend today about these cases, all I said was, I hope, beyond hope, that both of these cases are solved by the end of the year. That would be, to me, a win-win situation for everyone. And then we can move forward and go on to getting the resolution and the justice the girls deserve, all of them, all 6 of them. So you guys, I'm going to say good night, and I'm going to do my drawing. So give me a minute here. No cars yet, guys. I'm going to have those soon, though, I promise. Make sure that you subscribe, share, and hit the bell so that you get notifications when I go live the next time. I do have memberships available. My memberships start at $1.99 a month. Please join my channel. It does help. If you're unable to join, please make sure that you like my videos and my live streams. That helps me more than anything else, is the liking of my videos and sharing them. Stephanie, I am so sorry to hear this. Stephanie says Her daughter's best friend was murdered in Indy, still unsolved. Her baby was grazed in the head as well, but survives and found the next day. A gun safe that takes 4 to 5 men to move was stolen. That is the most horrific thing. I am so sorry, Stephanie. So sorry. My heart goes out to you. And your daughter's best friend. That is just so sad. So let's see. Here goes the drawing, you guys. Oh, cool. I'm glad. Okay. Hold on. Let's share the screen. Well, that's really strange. Okay. Paris. Paris wins. Paris, I don't remember if you've won already, but it's fine. I am going to draw one more. So just a moment, please, and let me draw again. So just a second, please. Let me draw one more. Okay. Congratulations, Just Pam. You win one of the Delphi girls bracelets. If you guys just email me your information, I'll get those sent out to you just as soon as I can. I couldn't remember, Paris. I could not remember. I'm starting to have so many that I can't remember who won and who didn't. But I'm so excited for both of you. So excited for both of you. So yeah, you guys, thank you again for being here with me tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please be safe out there and have a great rest of your week. I will see you guys all on Thursday night. We have a wonderful show on Thursday with Skip Jansen will be with me, and everyone loves Skip, and we will have a really good conversation. So please make sure you join me on Thursday night for an evening with Skip. That will be 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Love you guys and see you later.